Hey, what's going on? It's Quinn David Furness. Welcome to my show. Quinn David Furness presents the Beantown podcast for Friday, April 15th. It's Good Friday. What's going on? How are you? What's happening? Welcome to my show. My name is Quinn David Furness. Thank you so much for joining us on this holiest of days in a special AM edition of the Beantown podcast. No, not a live radio show, although that's on the docket. I found myself in like a crazy rabbit hole of 30 minutes length or so last night watching Prairie Home Companion videos and listening to songs and Lake Wobegon and all that stuff. And I had totally forgotten about that Mama's Little Baby Loves Shortcake, Round Strawberry Shortcake, Bebop, a Rebop, a Rhubarb Pie, and then also Powder Milk Biscuits. How could I forget Powder Milk Biscuits, an all-time classic, rest in peace to a Prairie Home Companion. But gosh, we're coming to you live. If you're watching on YouTube or Instagram, hello, I see we got a couple people on Instagram. Good to see you. A couple people on YouTube. Good to see you too. We're doing our Easter tradition. You know, we always like to talk about Passover, the 10 Commandments. Sometimes we dabble in the New Testament as well. Mount of Olives, Gethsemane, Judas Iscariot today. But the main feature of today's program, getting back to what people love here on the Beantown podcast, not just me, Quinn David Furness, we're also going to be power ranking the 10 plagues of Egypt. You are not going to want to miss it. And if you're just listening to us via our SoundCloud link or Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Player FM, wherever you find your podcast, hello to you as well. If you want to go back and kind of watch the live stream, you could do that on my YouTube channel, Quinn David Furness, or on Instagram, I'm q.queend. Twitter, we are at BeantownCast. My personal handle is at White Buns. Thanks so much for tuning in. I don't know if we've ever live streamed a show this early before. It's not natural. It's very it's a new thing for us. And you might be wondering, gosh, Quinn, well, it's 10:15 in the morning Central Time. What happened to your work responsibilities? The joys of working for a Catholic school. Good Friday. This is a big day for us, and I don't have to work, to just get right to the point. So that's a little bit about what we're doing, why we're going live so early in the morning. I got my coffee mug here. If you're on the live stream, it says Squad, and it's got members of the Peanuts gang. We've got Sally, Linus, Charlie, Lucy, and Snoopy, and then Woodstock bringing up the caboose. And you might be thinking, well, hey, it's an AM podcast. Quinn's probably got some crazy, triple shot matcha latte going on in there, or maybe some bourbon, or maybe he's just finishing off those holiday edition Bud Light seltzers that I've had in the fridge since, oh boy, I don't know, what was that, like right at the start of March I bought those. So it's been like a month and a half at this point, but I've got 2 left. Thank God the eggnogs are all gone because I drank them. But otherwise, yeah, those are rough, those Bud Light seltzers at some point, and I'm gonna have to finish off. I had I think just like a 12-pack of PBR that I've had in my fridge since I don't even remember when. I think I bought them, like back in late August, early September, when so like we had the family wedding here, and there were people just at the house or at my apartment here and there. And I think I bought it just to like have a backup beer here, not knowing what was going to take place. And I just they've just been there, right? I think everyone's got 1 or 2 of those things that are just in the fridge. For me, that's been PBR throughout pretty much this entire lease. And, more recently, the Bud Light seltzers. I've also had, I have one, and this is the last thing we're going to say before we get, more religious with you, I promise. I have one, this thing's golden, a Saugatuck Brewing peanut butter porter. Not an official sponsor of the show, but if you ever get the chance, if you find a peanut butter porter at your local, brew house or liquor store, or even under a bridge somewhere, definitely pick it up. It's delicious. It's naughty. I actually had bought the 6-pack of peanut butter porters, I think from Trader Joe's, back in like November, probably, just because it looked interesting. I wanted to try it. I never even heard of Saugatuck Brewing at that point. and then had a couple. It was delicious. We actually went to Saugatuck in early December. Rachel and I did. We had went to Saugatuck Brewing, had the peanut butter porter. It's absolutely delicious in person as well. And I've just been like saving the last one. It's just 12-ounce can because it's so good. And as if I couldn't just go out down the street and buy more if I wanted, but it's delicious. It's naughty. It's creamy. Remind you of anyone? I am the producer, showrunner, and caterer of this program, and listener discretion is advised when you're listening to the Beantown podcast. Number one, this is a show that I look forward to every year. I think it was year 2 or year 3 of our show. We did the live Easter sermon in my slightly derogatory or overinflamed, I guess, Righteous Gemstones style Southern accent. Although that show was the Easter special, the Easter sermon was premiered long before the Righteous Gemstones ever came to be. So I don't know, if there's some sort of liturgy or litigious kind of action, liturgious action we could take. But hey, maybe. That was the first and only sermon I've ever written in my life. And it was silly. And this whole show is kind of silly, but at the same time, I'm proud of myself, to be perfectly honest, for like writing a half-hour sermon. It made me feel like, hey, if I can do it for Easter, I can do it anytime. So if you never listened to that, you're looking for a fun sermon. Maybe here's the thing, folks. Maybe you don't want to go all the way to church. Maybe you're worried about COVID. Maybe you're going to get stuck at like a Polish mass or something, and you don't know what they're saying. There's not even, they don't even do the wine because it's COVID. So you just gotta, they sprinkle water in your face and stuff. You don't have to do any of that. You can settle down with a nice, again, non-official sponsor of the show, Saugatuck Brewing peanut butter porter. You can turn on the Easter sermon, and gosh, you're in and out in half an hour. There's no commute time, no traffic. You don't have to do the 5-minute, kid thing at the start where everyone comes around and circles up and, they tell some sort of story time about Easter and rabbits and all that good stuff, or even the 10 Commandments or the 10 plagues of Egypt. God was really on a kind of a 10 kick back in Exodus. And we're going to, before we get into our power rankings, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I want to dig right into it. Is hello to my friends in Pakistan. I don't think Easter is a huge thing out there, but for the 17 Christians who do live in, constant fear of persecution, dismemberment, and execution, hello to you, and I hope you're having a great, gosh, it's already Saturday where you are. Actually, no, it's not. It's 10 in the morning here. Pakistan's like, 8 hours ahead, something like that. So, yeah, you guys got nothing to worry about. Khyber Pass, Hyderabad, Islamabad. I was doing a little, I was just kind of if you're watching a live stream, I was just kind of moving my hands back and forth. I got Instagram to my right, YouTube to my left. All of a sudden it turned into a kind of a, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit kind of trifecta 3-in-1. And why not? It's a huge day for the Catholics. It's Easter Friday. And it's very fun. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, so there's kind of two things going on here. And that's just sort of the way we decided to do it. I feel like as a nation in the, starting in the 20th century, what I'm talking about is New Testament and Old Testament all kind of converging together. That's the thing. You would think that, they'd want to do kind of give Easter and Passover a little bit of a buffer zone for increased celebration. Maybe your household is half Catholic, half Jewish, and maybe you take off the high holidays in both religions. Then you could get double days off, but instead, maybe the big oil who didn't want their employees taking extra days off was behind this all the way back in the 1930s when they decided to merge the holidays together. They thought, hey, if our employees are celebrating Passover and Easter, gosh, we could save ourselves a lot of time by putting them on the same day. That way we don't have to do 2 days off. That would be like if Christmas was on the 4th of July, which would be absolutely dastardly, Dastardly. Weekend. It's Good Friday. Last night was Maundy Thursday, Maundy. And I think Passover is like a whole kind of week deal, right? That, and I'm not commenting one way or another on this, but people of the Jewish faith, they love those week-long holidays. How come we don't get that in Christianity? Judaism, you got a week of Passover. You got what, Hanukkah, that's at least like 11 or 12 days, right? Rosh Hashanah I don't know anything about it. It could be one day, it could be 8 days. So, boy, they're just going, they're trying to take over half this Gregorian calendar, if you will. And I think they're onto something. With Christianity, it's like you get Christmas Eve is like a pseudo holiday, and then you get Christmas, and the day after Christmas is back to work. Why? Not for me personally, but for general people. Why couldn't, I don't know why Jesus, he had a lot of things to say, but he never said anything about, boy, hey, let's, the Jews are onto something here. We're going to get rid of a lot of their traditions. We're going to go out with the Jew or out with the old, in with the Jew. Except it's the opposite, so the pun doesn't really work. Why couldn't he have held on to this whole week-long holiday sort of thing? I don't know. They say Jesus was perfect. That seemed like a miss, if you will. Something was amiss in Jesus' planning, I suppose. So let's so we're talking Easter. It's New Testament. It's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Judas betraying him. And I wanted to just quickly mention that one point, because I actually yesterday, gosh, it was a slow day at work. I actually read all the Gospels just like for fun, kind of out of curiosity, as I was preparing for this show today, because I don't think I've ever like sat down and read one gospel front to back, much less four. So I just decided to do that. They're pretty short. The Pharisees, the Jews, the whomever, Sadducees, Judas goes to them, right before the Last Supper, Thursday night, and he's like, hey, I'll betray you to Jesus. And they give him 30 pieces of silver to do that. But my question about this is, like, Jesus, it's not like he's this guy in hiding. It's not like he's bin Laden or something. Although I reckon they might have looked similar. I'm going to offend a lot of people today. But here's my issue. Like, this is all a farce. This is all just for show, for the cameras. Like, why do you need to quote betray him? He's all over town. He's in the garden. He's in the temple. He's healing lepers. He's maybe something's going on with Mary Magdalene. I don't want to get into that. But like, what's this whole betray him sort of thing? Honestly, Judas was a shrewd money man. And I don't want to do any sort of Jewish stereotypes here. But all he's doing is like, hey, meet me at this, garden on the Mount of Olives at 11 p.m. And we'll, Jesus will be here either way. But like, you can also do that and give me 30 pieces of silver. Hey, in today's world, that's like $1 million. And then, Judas was such a sissy. He does all this. He gets paid. And then like 2 hours later, he goes and hangs himself. Like, gosh, I hope he had his beneficiaries lined up on his Vanguard account. Jeez. And the one other thing I want to say, and I promise we're getting into 10 plagues after that, but while we're still kind of in New Testament mode, because we're going hard left into the Old Testament right after this book of Exodus, Jesus got through such a fit when he takes these 12 guys up to the Garden of Gethsemane. Scene. They just have this huge, lavish dinner, a Last Supper, if you will. You've seen the painting, you've seen the Da Vinci rendering. There's glasses of wine. They're, hyper decanted. I'm pretty sure I saw veal on there, or beef Wellington, or, it's just all this heavy stuff, and more wine and more veal and, shepherd's pie and more wine. And all of a sudden, Jesus is like, hey, guys, let's go up to this mountain. So let's do all this vigorous exercise to get up there, probably have some more wine. And let's do an overnight, thing where there's not even an agenda. Jesus is just like praying by himself. He leaves these 12 guys. And then they happen to try to catch some Z's. And he comes back, it's 2 a.m, and Jesus comes back and they're snoozing, and he's like, why you guys couldn't stay awake for like 2 hours after all this heavy wine and protein and a big long hike halfway up the side of a mountain? So Jesus was kind of a diva, I think, is what I learned from the later chapters of these gospels. And then you get the whole Judas, he smooches him. I don't know if there was some homoeroticism there, or just general eroticism, or general homo, or gosh, that sounds like something right out of Platoon or something. But this whole deal is just botched, poorly executed. The was it the Romans who got Jesus, or was it the Jews, or both at the same time? Or there's not very clear. They're paying Judas to do nothing, to do a smooch. It's like he's in that impractical Joker show, and they're like, "Oh, we'll give you 30 pence of the silver if you smooch Jesus," and then he doesn't. Like, Sal, is that his name? And Jesus getting pissed off because I think Jesus knew that he had what was coming to him, and he was just kind of probably lashing out emotionally at other people about problems that were his fault. So with that in mind, we're 18 minutes into our Easter special. We've offended a lot of people already. And that's totally okay. Because here's the thing, kind of like Jesus, I'm just out here spitting truths, biblical truths. I really don't think I haven't made any giant leaps of faith, if you will, unlike Indiana Jones at the end of Last Crusade. Okay, so hey, speaking of Last Crusade, if this Peanuts mug squad was one of the cups they had in that room with the knight at the end of Last Crusade, I would have taken this one. That's got to be the Holy Grail. Okay, let's give a quick thank you to our sponsors, and then we're going to power rank these 10 plagues of Egypt. And I'm not doing a full ad read today, I promise, because I want to get into these power rankings. I want to say a shout out to our friends at Home Pride Oregon. When you need your home inspected in Central Oregon, call a safe, reliable guy. He's been in the business for a long time. He knows your needs. He's not going to screw you. Unlike Judas Iscariot, call Steve at 541-410-0316 or go to homeprideoregon.com. Also, our good friends, the Samsung Q2U series, pulling double duty last week. It was a lot of fun. If you missed last week's episode, we talked to our tax expert and Easter enthusiast, Matthew Fiedler. He was kind enough to come on the show right in the heat of tax season, so we really appreciate that. And Samson pulled double duty for us last week. Sounded great, crisp, clean, and clear, as always. And remember, when God speaks, whether it's the Easter special or any of our other shows throughout the year, use the Samson. And if you're a Beantown, if you're a Beanhead, if you will, who only catches our video streams on YouTube, and you think, gosh, QuinnDoes.com, go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. It's one a week, baby, without fail. We have never missed since we started January 2018. Okay, never missed, one a week, every single time. It's just the videos come rather infrequently because it's a whole extra production, 2 or 3 minutes there. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to our friends Cuts by Q. If you're looking at us on the audio stream, you need to take a shower. The humidity in Chicago this last week was doing, just whatever the opposite of wonders is. It looked like freaking Shirley Temple singing the Good Ship Lollipop. But we're doing okay right now. But the hat's going back on because I'm kind of cold. We had like 70 degrees in Chicago on, what was that, Tuesday or something? And now it's about 40 degrees and hailing. Speaking of hailing, when you need a fresh do something snappy new, call the experts at Cuts by Q. Let's get into these 10 plagues of Egypt. Okay, it's what you tuned in for. It's the main event, the title card, the heavyweight championship, the 10 plagues of Egypt. So if you're wondering why we're talking about this, it's Passover. It's the 10 Commandments, famous film. It happens, they showed on ABC, tonight, something like that. It's like 3.5 hours long. Yul Brynner, Charlton Heston, the classic Exodus classic, if you will. So, in case you don't know the story, basically the Egyptians go into Israel. They take all the Hebrews. They're like, "Hey, you guys come work for us now." They're enslaved, and basically Moses gets put in like this bread basket in the river, and he gets picked up by Ramses' mistress or something like that. He gets raised in Egypt, and then eventually Moses ends up killing some guy. It's this whole big production. Yeah, you heard me right. Moses kills a guy. And then he flees to the burning bush, who talks to him and is like, "Yo, you got to go back." And Moses is throwing a little fit. And the burning bush is like, "Yeah, take Aaron with you. He's your brother." And, big reveal, end of season 1 or something. And so they go back to Egypt. And Moses, via Aaron, his mouthpiece, first is like, "Yo, let's do some magic to show the wonders and power of God." And one of my favorite moments in biblical history, just casual magic. We've talked about this before. Those Egyptian magicians, sorcerers, they throw down their rods and they turn into snakes. That's pretty badass. And it means the bad guys can do magic too, which I felt was a part of the Bible that was, heavily underexplored. I would have loved if, Pontius Pilate, Jesus had his wedding of Cana, maybe in water into wine. Maybe Pontius Pilate has like a wedding of Bethlehem, and it's like water into absinthe. That's a story I would read. They could do a sequel series of some kind. Pontius origin story, Pontius. And then Ramses or Pharaoh's like, "No, it's not going to work." And so that brings us to the point of today's power rankings. God unleashes 10 plagues upon Egypt, one after another. I'm pretty sure after each one, Moses is like, "Hey, can we go now?" And he's like, "No." And finally, spoiler alert, does happen after the 10th one. But let's go from in chronological order in terms of when they appear in the Bible. And then we will jump into our actual power rankings of these plagues. So, in chronological order, we have Jesus, or excuse me, he's not in this one yet. Turns the Nile into blood. Okay, that's the first one. I gotta tell you, I don't want to spoil anything in the power rankings, but God really came out swinging here. I mean, completely cutting off the water supply. It's a pretty badass way to wreck a civilization. Okay, second, we have frogs. Third, we have lice or gnats, depending on your translation. Fourth, we have flies. Fifth, we have the livestock. I was reading it this morning, actually, in Exodus to prepare for today's episode. I read a lot of Bible to prepare for today's show, unlike usual. It's not clear what exactly he does to the livestock. The Bible just says basically like God will come down upon the livestock. And obviously people are like, "Oh, that means like he's going to murder them." And for the point of this show, that's what we'll go with. But it could just be like maybe all of a sudden there were a lot of cows that were overcome with the Spirit of the Lord. I don't know. 6, we have boils. 7, we have hail. 8, we have locusts. 9, we have 3 days of darkness. And 10, we have something we talk about pretty much every year to celebrate Easter, the death of the firstborns of all Egyptians. So, an absolute classic. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through these, excuse me, big belch. We're going to go through these 10 to 1 from least badass to most badass, okay? The 10 plagues of Egypt here. And thank you for those comments on Instagram and YouTube. I see you very clearly. Thank you for being here. Okay, starting at number 10. So we're going from least badass to most badass. Number 10, we have the 3 days of darkness. Okay, it's like, it would be kind of scary at first if you were an Egyptian. Like, oh, isn't it usually sunny out? But they didn't have clocks. They didn't have watches. And so it's like, at first it'd be like, I don't think it's supposed to be dark right now. But then it would just be like, you know what? I could get used to this. And again, we're going to ruffle some feathers here. That God didn't even know like what he was he was so focused on Egypt, he didn't realize you go up to the Arctic Circle in December, you go to the Antarctic Circle in July. 3 days of darkness is nothing. I mean, has anyone ever seen that movie Insomnia? Either the original or the remake. Who's the guy who did Dark Knight? Christopher Dark Knight. That movie Insomnia, it's light out 24/7, so it's actually the opposite of what I'm talking about here. But if they were in Antarctica, it would be the opposite. It'd be completely dark. If you've never seen Christopher Nolan's Insomnia, it's actually really good. It's Robin Williams and Robert De Niro from the late 90s. And Hilary Swank, I think. An all-time classic. It's a great thriller. So here's the thing. 3 days of darkness, that's nothing. Like up there in Alaska in December, you got like 50 days of darkness. So this whole 3 days of darkness stuff is like, who cares? It sounds like a good opportunity to catch some Z's, if you ask me. Okay, so that's our least badass of the 10 plagues. Coming in at number 9, we have hail. Because it's like hail would, hail might, it might tear your canopy a little bit, or it might be a minor irritant. But heck, it was hailing outside in Chicago this morning. It doesn't bug me. Like, just wear a hat or something. I don't know. Did they have hats in Egypt? You would think so. If not, I don't know what that says about their civilization if you can't make a freaking hat. But hail is kind of just like, okay, well, we'll just go inside. Okay, good opportunity to catch up on sleep, play cards, do some of those hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics sounds cool. We had this like tablet of some kind, or a tapestry or something, I don't remember, that my dad received from his pharmacist at the Kmart growing up. Manny, if you're still out there, I don't think Manny made it. I think Manny passed away some number of years ago. But Manny, if you're watching the show, hello, and thank you for our Egyptian hieroglyphic. I don't know what it means. We never got a translation. I don't know if it was pharmacy related, but Kmart pharmacy. What a time to be alive. I don't even remember where the pharmacy was in the Kmart. That's okay. Probably back, actually I do, back where the cafe used to be. They repurposed the whole area. Coming in at number 8, we're going to get into some animals here. We've got frogs. Okay, so there are varying levels, and we're going to talk about every one of those levels of, kind of animals and pests going on here in the 10 plagues. God clearly got, caught up on this whole animals thing and just went nuts with it. But I think out of all the animals we're chatting about here today, frogs are just kind of the most dopey, if you will, Dopey. Like, yeah, it would. Okay, I'm not gonna like. We're into plague 8 now. Okay, so this isn't like the darkness or the hail where it's like, yeah, whatever. Like, good one, God. Frogs would suck. Okay, they're smelly, they're slimy. You figure there's gonna be a lot of tadpoles somewhere because these frogs got to spawn somehow. That's the thing. It's like, did God just like send a shipment of frogs from Zambezi or something up to Egypt, or did they like spawn somewhere, or did they just magically appear? We've already seen some cool magic in Exodus, but having all those frogs around I think it would, more than anything, would just be loud. Frogs can be very vocal, especially if they were like bullfrogs. What would be scary, and we don't really get this in Exodus because lazy writing, is if they were some of those venomous tree frogs. Now that would be pretty badass. I think that could move frogs. Frogs is like, okay, whatever you could eat them. Remember Doc Hopper, whatever his name is, from the Muppet movie? He wants to kill Kermit or make Kermit. It wasn't clear to me when I watched it when I was 7 years old. I always thought he wanted to eat Kermit, but I think it's actually like he wants Kermit to become the official spokesperson for Doc Hopper frog legs. I've never eaten frog legs, I don't think. I think that's more of a Southern thing. I've never spent a lot of time in the Deep South by choice. I've had chicken feet, but I've never had frog legs. So anyways, it kind of seems like God was actually giving them a kind of an out there, an extra food source. Coming in at number 7. Now, here's where things are starting to get a little bit tougher. I think those first 3 in the list for me were like, yeah, like we're going to do this, this, and this. And now we're getting into ones that are like going to go from minor inconvenience to like, boy, this is a real pain in the ass. And so I had a hard time kind of ranking the next 4. They were all, I don't want to say interchangeable, but the next 4 were really tough for me to decide where to put them. So at number 7, I put flies. And my reasoning for putting flies, as a less badass plague compared to things like lice/gnats, boils, locusts, livestock, others, is just kind of like flies suck. Okay, I don't like flies. You don't like flies. I used to get flies in my Rogers Park apartment. I used to have to buy these little like fly traps that you like tape to the window. They had flowers painted on them. I think there was some sort of pheromone going on to attract them, and it worked. Like they would fly into it, they would get stuck, that sort of thing. But they were a total pain in the ass. But it's just like, unless you get those really nasty horse flies or deer flies where they bite you and it hurts like hell, is there, it sucks. No one's having a good time, but it's like, you just kind of swat them away and you go about your day. So that's why I put flies there, because I think things are about to get real serious. Things are about to get real badass. So flies came in at number 7 on our list. Number 6 is where I think we're really starting to get into a little bit of trouble here for Pharaoh. Number 6, I have lice/gnats. So it's not exactly clear in my, doing some translative translative translative. There's an extra A in there. That's okay. In my work, whether it is actually locusts or gnats, but they both would be a total chore. Not locusts or gnats. Gnats or lice is what we're doing here at number 6. So if it's lice, that sucks, because it's like we're all going to have to shave our heads. Maybe that's why Ramsey was bald. Ramsey. Been watching too much Hell's Kitchen. Ramses the second, who again may or may not be the Pharaoh in the Bible. I guess we should just say Pharaoh. The 10 Commandments film takes the liberty of naming the Pharaoh character Ramses the second, portrayed, by the unequivocal Yul Brynner. But I guess in reality, it's just Pharaoh. So lice would be a pain in the ass. You have to shave your head. You look like Jada Pinkett Smith. Checking to make sure Will Smith doesn't come slap me. So that would be bad. If it was gnats, that would suck too. Kind of like the flies, just really irritating, except gnats you can't even really see until it's too late. I can't tell you how many runs at 6 a.m. along the lake I had last summer and the summer before, where you're just running, you're feeling good about yourself, and all of a sudden just boom, right through a swarm of gnats. And then there's something to this, we mentioned pheromones, naturally attracted to some people more than others. And I think I got the bad genes for that, because sometimes I'll be out there running in the summers in the early mornings, and it's just like this swarm that just won't leave my head. And I recall detasseling as a youngster. There was this one field in particular down around the Rochelle area, I think, where we had really bad gnats. And the first couple of days, I didn't really know what to do about it. And they were just like all over your face, and you can't go anywhere. You're just like walking slowly through these cornfields. And so I actually ended up in my my hat that I always wore, which is a Quincy University hat. The trick is, and it worked. So those of you, Egypt, you got a time capsule, time traveler's wife, which I never saw. If you can go back to Egypt and handle this plague, take some vanilla extract and dab it on the brim of your hat, Quincy University or otherwise, and it actually does a good job of keeping the gnats away. So, and gosh, I mean, this has got to be about 13 years later, something like that. I still have that hat, and if you take a strong whiff, you can still get the vanilla. So, lice/gnats, not good. But I think we're now really about to start to get into some hardcore area. At number 5, so we've made it to the sort of top half of our power rankings here. So to remind you, we've got 3 days of darkness, hail, frogs, flies, lice/gnats. Number 5, we have boils. And this is the first one that's like straight up affecting the humans of Egypt. So now I think this is where Pharaoh was like, oh shit, like what's happening to us? Okay. If you've seen the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, you probably remember when their faces melt and the angel of death, who we'll come back to in a little bit here, comes out of the ark and starts, melting people's faces and shooting through their bodies. That's not exactly what the boils were like, but I imagine if you're just maybe you take a lot of pride, you're an Egyptian. Here you got kind of the antiquity version of Neutrogena, acne cream, all that good stuff, and all of a sudden you're breaking out in boils, and it's just like, well, gosh, this sucks. Like, what am I supposed to do about this? I personally never had a boil. I don't even really understand what it is, why you get them, who gets them, other than the Egyptians. But it doesn't sound like fun, especially if you're someone who takes a lot of pride in your skin. And I think the Egyptians were. I think they were constantly doing those mud baths, those clay masks. I think they had a lot more resources than most civilizations at that point in time. So, for vain people like the Egyptians, those boils were going to be tough and just frankly uncomfortable. Okay, so number 4, boy, we are getting down to the nitty gritty here. And out of all of our kind of little pests that God sent, these ones are the kings of pests. And they come up over and over again in the Bible. Locusts at number 4. So if you don't know, a locust is, I believe, like a grasshopper. It's kind of the same type of thing. Let's see. Locusts are a group, this is according to Wikipedia. Locusts are a group of certain species of shorthorn grasshoppers that have a swarming phase. And that's the thing. That's what we think of when we think of locusts. Oh, this is interesting. These insects are usually solitary, but under certain circumstances become more abundant and change their behavior and habits, becoming gregarious. So those are two things you don't want to put together: gregariousness and locusts, because those locusts, they came in hot. And here's the thing with locusts: when we talk about flies, we talk about gnats. Gnats swarm and they're in groups and that sort of thing, and they're a pain in the ass. But the thing where, though, remember from Land Before Time, there were those special leaves, like the shining stars or whatever that Littlefoot was always bitching about. They're taking all of those. They're taking your maize. They're taking your beans. They're, if you had any flowers, in your hanging gardens of Babylon, if you will, Egyptian edition, they're taking all that. And they just come right through, they clean up, and they just go right along their merry way. Next thing you know, 30 seconds later, your whole crop system is devastated. And so that's why locusts come in at number, gosh, where are we on is this 3 already? Are we at number 3? No, locusts come in at number 4 because it's just total badass. God was really starting to take no prisoners here with the locusts. And I mean, hey, if locusts came in and destroyed my, arborvitaes or aloe plants, which would be helpful because the sun is very intense. You're getting sunburn. You want that natural aloe vera to help with your skin. You still got boils. That's right. We're not completely done with the boils yet. And all of a sudden your aloe plant, gone. Boom. That would suck. Okay, so number 3, we're down to our top 3 here. I think at this point, anyone who's listened to the Beantown podcast for the last 5 years knows what number 1 is going to be. So it's probably not a big surprise because it's the same plague we always talk about. But I'm going to stick to my guns here today. Number 3, this is one we briefly talked about earlier, the livestock plague. So it's not entirely clear what happens to the livestock. And I think, for badass reasons, we're saying God came down and he slaughtered them, with his hand of justice. But the Bible pretty much just says that God came down upon the livestock, which, I think it's fair to say, like, that was probably a bad thing for the livestock, not a good thing. God's going to come down. He's going to wipe them out. And you figure they don't really have refrigeration. back in these days. So the problem with the Egyptians now is like you got all these dead cows, pigs, horses, camels, a lot of camels. I don't know if they had domesticated hippopotami back in those days, but potential hippopotami. And they're just dead. And the big something we're not considering is we still got all these flies, gnats, locusts here. You know, for the most part, they're gone, but there's still some old vestiges of the prior plagues. And they're gonna find those dead carcasses before you do. And so because the fact that we got all these pests around, we don't have a good way to preserve the meat. You know, I don't think they had a lot of salt back in those days. Certainly no refrigeration. I don't know. You know, you could probably like take them inside some of the pyramids, but it's got to be what 5-10 degrees cooler in there. You know, Egypt in the summer at least 90 degrees, so you're not. It's you know diminishing returns at that point. So you're losing all your meat, and you just had all your vegetation wiped out, and all of a sudden you're thinking, gosh, what are we going to eat? Dead, rancid meat. You know, that's going to be real tough on the indoor plumbing. So for that reason, that's why livestock comes all the way up at number 3, and it works well in conjunction with the vegetation loss from the locusts. But that's why I'm putting livestock at number 3. Okay, we're down to our last 2 plagues of Egypt, and we're down to our first one and our last one in terms of chronological order. And I got to tell you, one of these is just like extremely frightening and would be terrifying, and the other one is just straight up murder. And because of that reason, we gotta go blood in the water first. So that's coming in at number 2 on our power. In his first stroke of justice, turns the Nile River into blood. Okay, and it's not clear for how long. And shout out to my mom on YouTube. Good to see you. If anyone has ever been in downtown Chicago, let's paint a picture, okay? If anyone has ever been in downtown Chicago on St. Patrick's Day, or more specifically the Saturday before St. Patrick's Day, you've seen it. They dye the river green. It's cool. It's fun. People are celebrating and cheering, and they're taping The Fugitive and parades and all that stuff. Now imagine it's 1000 BC and you're in Egypt, and it's the same thing, except there's no Lake Michigan. There's only the Nile River, and that's where you get all your water from. And instead of dyeing the river green, you're dyeing it red, but you're not just dyeing it. It's actually blood. So here's a question that I had. And in an area where I would like to point out one of God's inefficiencies, let's say. So he does this first. Now, where did this blood come from? He had to manufacture a lot of blood. I don't know if there was human sacrificing going on. Maybe he got Isaac clones and he took them back up on the mountain, and this time he did it for real, or livestock from Namibia or Greece or Bhutan, wherever. Oxens. What's the name of there's another type of yaks, Y-A-K, yaks. That would be a lot of blood. Wampas. But here's my issue. If God was smart, if he wanted to save on costs, time, manpower, whatever, he would have done turning the river into blood like at the end, at least after the livestock, or after this, the other plague, which is going to be number 1, which you all know at this point. Because then he's got all this blood lying around. He could dig some trenches. Instead, God puts this plague at the front end, and now he's got to do all this extra blood. So that's one thing that's not really covered in the Bible is where does this blood come from? I don't, so later on in the Bible, in the New Testament, Jesus turns the water into wine, which is pretty cool. So there's, we know that the Godhead 3-in-1 has that kind of superpower, but you kind of wonder, did he have, is this like a very taxing, tolling thing for God to, do all? Look, there's a big difference between 2 gallons of water turning it into wine for a small private wedding in Cana and turning the longest river in the world into blood. Okay. Like, use your head, God. Regardless of all this, I wanted to air my grievances about that play because it just felt really poorly executed. is pretty badass. What are the Egyptians going to drink? Now, I will say they still had their livestock. They still had their vegetation at this point. So it's like, yeah, it would be a pain in the ass to not have fresh water. But I feel like you could like collect the morning dew off of your leaves. And you could, make do with the dew, if you will, which if Mountain Dew wants to use that as a marketing slogan, they can't. They just have to pay me. I think a biblical themed Exodus 10 Commandments style Mountain Dew marketing campaign could be good. They're trying to win back those church going folk. I don't know how they lost them, but that's a separate podcast. Okay, we've arrived at number 1. And you all know what it is. We talk about it every year on our Easter special. It's easily the most badass / terrifying / awful thing that God has ever done. And here's the thing. When I bring this up with Christians, which I don't really, because I don't converse with Christians about Christianity frequently, they're benevolent and rude and malicious and, new God, New Testament, like that God is cool. I don't think like you get to murder a bunch of people and then, 1,000 years later be like, oh, I don't murder people anymore, so now I'm cool. Like you wouldn't have that in real life, right? What if someone murders a bunch of people, he's 20 years old, and then, 50 years later, you're like, oh, I love this guy. He definitely, is good now. He didn't murder like 1 million people. No, he's cool. See the issues here, God? It's the slaughtering of the Egyptian firstborn sons, which also a little, I don't want to get into all the social issues of the day, but I mean, here's the thing. If you think about this, so it's all, he's only killing the male babies. First of all, he's assuming people's gender identities. Second of all, imagine going on Egyptian Tinder after this. Imagine if you were a second or third born son in Egypt and 1/3 to 1/2 of the eligible, male population was just gone. The dating pool has all of a sudden you got all these Egyptian babes, which if Prince of Egypt was any indication, they're babes. And you got all of these, all I'm saying is like, man, 1000 BC, if you survived the final plague and you were a male, an eligible male bachelor, that dating scene was prime back in Egypt. But you all know what happens by now. God tells the Hebrews that the night of Passover, he's sending the angel of death, which is awesome. Just like, that could be like my metal band name, into town to wipe out God had to put a little like, oh, you got to do this to show your love for me, which is bullshit. But he's like, if you don't want your firstborn son to be killed, then kill a lamb. More killing, a lot of killing in this book. And smear their blood across the top of your door frame outside. So the angel of death knows that, no, you're good. Like they're chill. Okay, they're chill fam. And he'll pass over your house, hence the name of the holiday. You learned something new on the Beantown podcast today. It's a very educational program. But he didn't, obviously, he wasn't going to do this, but he didn't tell the Egyptians that. They didn't relay the message. So obviously the Egyptians are just like, they've survived 9 plagues. They're feeling very hardy and tough at this point. And all of a sudden the angel of death just swoops in overnight while they're sleeping and kills all the babies, the firstborn male babies. And that's just like straight up murder. So, yeah, that kind of sucks. It's easily the most badass thing. It's horrifying. It's awful, but you can't deny that God just came in there and like wiped out approximately 1/4 of the population of the entire civilization. Here's the thing. Does it translate to firstborn babies or just all firstborn males? If so, we're looking at more like 35 to 40% of the population. Anyways, those are the 10 plagues of Egypt. Our power rankings, again, from 10 to 1, least badass to most badass. We've got the 3 days of darkness, the hail, the frogs, the flies, the lice/gnats, the boils, the locusts, the coming upon of the livestock, the blood in the Nile, and then the death of the firstborn. And we're at about 52 minutes here in the Beantown podcast. And that's what we want to talk about today. The 10 plagues of Egypt. We talked about some issues with Jesus and the slumber party and Judas is smooching and all that good stuff. But gosh, it was last Easter specials yet. The Easter sermon, which we talked about already, was a lot of fun. This one was great. I think despite being 50 plus minutes, it was tight. Excuse me. I talked about the things I wanted to talk about. We said hello to our sponsors. Technically, no big issues yet, as far as I can tell. We got an Instagram stream going. We got a YouTube stream going. It's been a lot of fun. So everyone, it's Good Friday. I hope that either you have the day off or it's a little chill where you're at. Hopefully, you have better weather than Chicago, and enjoy this holiest of holy weekends. If you're going to go to communion, go back twice, double up on that wine. And maybe your congregation will splurge for name brand wine and crackers this weekend if you're lucky. For anyone doing any Easter egg hunts or egg dyeing or general dyeing, if you're an Egyptian firstborn son, enjoy your time. Have good merriment and cheer with your family and loved ones. And I think we're gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna turn on the Easter Brown. Easter Brown sounds like a Catholic church detective or something. Isn't there the Father Brown? Is that the name? He's like a priest or something, and he's a detective. I've never read those. Is that what it's called? If you know, email us beantownpodcast@yahoo.com. Again, that's beantown@yahoo.com, and let us know. I remember it being a point of discussion when I was homeschooled in like 7th grade in a Bible class, and there's something there. It's like Father Brown or like Friar, Joe or something like that. He's a Catholic detective, I think. Didn't investigate the priests sexually abusing the boys though. So I don't know how good of a detective he is. I want to thank everyone for listening to our show, whether you are liturgists or not, whether you are religious or not. I hope you enjoyed our Easter special, and our power ring will come to us sooner rather than later. So we're going to get our outro music going here. I love you. Stay safe, stay sane, and I'll check in on you next time. Bye, everyone. See Instagram. Good to see you, and chat with you shortly. Bye. And our good friends at YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, stay sane. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, check in on you next time. Bye.